Very good to see Bhikkhuni Palanyani, and I would like to request her to clarify my confusion. My confusion is how vibhava tanha can be explained in the context of sentient beings striving to free themselves from samsara, striving to attain nirvana. Whether it is good to have vibhava tanha to break free of bhava jati. I think do you understand the question?
I'm just pondering over if I understand the question. I think I do.
Okay. Because I think the idea is that striving for nibbana is striving for extinction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this could be considered vibhava tanha.
Yeah.
That's the assumption here.
I don't want to say, because I'm not a Pali expert, so I don't want to say that vibhava tanha is the exact thing that you need to have in your mind in order to break free from the rounds of rebirth, or to get rid of your clinging, so that you can overcome becoming and birth. But what you need is a certain wanting to practice. You need to have that deep desire to practice and to meditate and to strive to be free from samsara and to attain nibbana. Otherwise you wouldn't have the power, the force to go through all the things that may arise during your course of meditation. There are many things coming up in your mind which will make you wanting to give up, wanting to run away, wanting to clean first, and wanting to do this and that. And so it is important to keep the mind with the desire to become enlightened fixed on the goal, on the goal nibbana. But I don't think that tanha is the right word for it. So because tanha is more like a lust or so, and that's probably not the correct desire in that sense. Vibhava tanha is the desire to be,
to not be,
of course. And I think that is both the desire to be free from suffering, or the desire not to be in this samsara anymore, is really what it needs. It needs more clarity than the lust that bhava or vibhava tanha has. So I would say it's more a chanda. If we want to use Pali terms, I would maybe use chanda in order to what you need to strive to get to nibbana. But I think Bhante can explain far better than I. So please.
Start telling me about vibhava tanha. No, I don't have much from a technical point of view to mention. I want to use this as an opportunity to talk about what we were talking about in regards to the metta thing. Because it came up this morning, early this morning I was with a group from Los Angeles, and they asked a question. We have 3 questions here, and I want to link them together. I'm going to show you the 3 questions and link them together with one concept, because it seems to be more and more that it's the same problem that's occurring on many different fronts. This morning the question was about equanimity. We want to develop equanimity, but then what place does joy have in the practice? So if we're just going to be equanimous, well then what happens to our joy? The question today, or it wasn't a question, but the question that sort of arose in my mind was, if a person has defilements in their mind, what good is it to practice loving kindness meditation? Like, what good is the actual practice of loving kindness meditation when they don't really mean it? Right? You sit down and you say it, but it's an artifice. It's artificial. You say, you have these people, oh, I wish for everyone to be happy, and then you get them practicing vipassana and they explode into anger and frustration, and they say, oh, then they get quite turned off by vipassana because they think that it's making them an angry person. And the question here now is this question that always comes up. You say we want to give up craving. Well, what about the craving to become enlightened? What about the desire to become enlightened? And someone asked, I think, we get all sorts of questions from everywhere. Most of them we don't answer. I don't answer, like on YouTube or here or there. Far too many. But there was one interesting one today about, I think asked on the forum recently, something along this line. Anyway, we get this in many different forms. So let's go over these. The answer that comes to mind is the same in all three. We have to understand the difference between an emotive state and an intellectual state, I think is quite important. The first thing you need to do, the Buddha said, before you begin to practice, is set your mind in right view and morality. Okay, we'll put morality aside. Let's look at this concept of right view. Right view is actually what comes at the end. It's the realization of the Four Noble Truths. A Sotapanna has right view. A person who has become enlightened, they have right view. But here the Buddha is saying, before you start, you need to have right view. Most definitely, what he's referring to is intellectual right view. This is why listening to the Dhamma is important in the beginning. This is why reciting the Buddha's teaching is important, to change the way you're looking at things. The question about upekkha, the answer there is, when a person is equanimous, it doesn't mean they feel equanimity or the equanimous feeling. Sankarupekka jnana, the highest state of vipassana insight before you enter into nibbana, doesn't mean you always have a neutral feeling. It means when there's a happy feeling, you see it with equanimity. That's a happy feeling. You don't judge it. Intellectually, there arises no intellectual activity. There's no, oh, this is my good feeling. And when there's a painful feeling, you see it equanimously. Indifferently or impartially, is the word. So we use the word equanimous, and you say an enlightened person is always equanimous. And you think, well, that's kind of dull, no? What about joy? And as we learned in Abhidhamma yesterday, enlightened people actually experience joy. They smile, and when they smile, there's joy. It's a somanasa sahagata citta. It's associated with a pleasant feeling. But even that pleasant feeling, the arahant doesn't become attached to it, and that's what we mean by equanimity. It means the mind, the intellectual activity is seeing, oh, this is a happy feeling, seeing it as a happy feeling. With loving kindness, the reason I think why it actually might be good for people to practice at certain times loving kindness meditation is not necessarily because they're going to develop loving kindness out of it, even though they might, is that it changes the way they look at the situation. So before they practiced the meditation, they were thinking, they were not only angry at, this is what I explained, my idea today, they were not only angry at the person, but they also had this idea, or this feeling, or this intellectual idea that it was, that person deserves, or I didn't deserve what that person did to me, or the idea that this is how it should be. I'm so angry at this person, or just the idea, I'm so angry at this person. And when you sit down and say, may that person be happy, you're like, but, no, I want the person to suffer. So you may not change the anger, but you change, and this is what you really feel, especially if you put it with vipassana meditation. Because when you practice vipassana meditation, it's very easy to lose sight of the view. You see the anger. Okay, I'm very angry at this person. So you say to yourself, angry, angry. But deep down you're like, man, I want to really hurt that person. When you change your view, or you feel self-righteous about it, you say, that person, how could they do that to me? How could they do that to me? And you just say angry, angry, and it doesn't go away. Because you're still thinking, how could they do that to me? That person's such an evil person, or so on. And when you practice loving kindness, you say, may that person be happy. You're changing your idea, you're changing your outlook, you're changing the intellectual activity. So you might still be angry, but you say, oh, look at this anger that I have inside. You're no longer thinking about the person. You've diffused that intellectual activity. You've changed the way you see the anger, the way you see the situation. And I think that can help. These two are not what you're asking, but when we talk about desire for becoming enlightened, wanting to practice, desire or wanting or attachment even to the practice, you don't need a emotion of clinging, right? And I think I've said this before in a video or somewhere. It's like, when you say you want to become enlightened, well, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that here's enlightenment. You say, ooh, that's wonderful. That's mine. That's good. I want more of that. I want to get that. Why we say you have desire for become enlightened, and why people can appear to have great desire to become enlightened. Because consider the desire to become a movie star. Totally tainted with not the desire to be a movie star, the desire to have people say, oh, you're so beautiful, and oh, can I have your autograph, and feeling good about yourself, and having people esteem you, and having money, and having fame, and having power, and so on. This is why we want to be famous. The reason why we want to become enlightened is totally different. There is none of that lust, none of that greed. There is none of the tanha involved. Tanha takes an object. What is the object of wanting to become enlightened? If it's tanha, what is the object of the tanha? Nibbana? You don't even know what nibbana is. It can arise for a meditator that they think, boy, if I were enlightened, then people would esteem me, then everyone would look at me, and then I'd be able to teach people, and so on. And that's a kind of a tanha. That's a kind of a craving. Or you can have this pain, vibhava tanha, and you say, oh, this pain is so awful, I wish it would go away. That's vibhava tanha. The pain is the object, and you want for it to go away. And this actually gets quite close to something positive, right? Because the Buddha said, well, we want to be free from suffering. So isn't it that when you experience pain, you think, no, go away? Absolutely not. That has no benefit. The Buddha said, parinyayanti, dukkang arya satchang parinyayanti. This noble truth of suffering has to be fully understood, seen thoroughly. Means when there's pain, you have to say, okay, let's look at the pain. When there's anything arises, you have to be willing to see it objectively for what it is, thoroughly and completely. See it for what it is. What do we mean when we say desire to practice and the intention to practice and the strong, as Bhikkhuni said, what can become a very strong, emphatic desire to become enlightened is intellectual. It's not quite intellectual, but it's in the mind. It has nothing to do with the sensation of liking something or wanting something. You see suffering, you see what's going on in your mind, you see your attachments, you know where they're going to lead. And the more you see, the more you know, the stronger is this chanda. But it isn't tanha, it's just a mind state that arises with intense energy and effort directed towards the practice. This single-pointed goal of becoming enlightened, not because you think, "Ooh, that's going to be delicious," or "That's going to be beautiful," or something, but saying, "This is suffering. This is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. That's the cause of suffering," and letting it go, and leaving off of the activity of attaining it, and seeing this is the way to cessation of suffering. This is the way to freedom. This is the correct thing to do. It's an intellectual. It's the knowledge that this is the right way, and that knowledge can be quite powerful. It leads to chanda, the contentment with the practice. It leads to virya. It leads you to have great effort in the practice. But it's not like, "I'm got to get away from this suffering. This is horrible." It's totally impartial, really. You're impartially active, right? People, we don't understand that, because you think, well, if you have all that energy and all that zest and that zeal, you must want it, no? And that's why they think, if you're going to go off and live in the forest as a monk, man, those guys must be really attached to being a monk and being enlightened, becoming enlightened. But it doesn't have to be that way. When you see things clearly, the same effort arises out of knowledge, out of wisdom. The more you know that something is proper, the more of your energy you're going to put into it. And if you see this is the only thing that has meaning, that has benefit, the amount of effort that you can put into it is quite amazing, actually. Meditators, they come. Sometimes we ask our meditators to practice meditation continuously. And maybe sometimes they go with little sleep, or they don't even sleep, and they think, "Oh, that's horrible, that's terrible." And then sometimes you find them later on saying, "I'm just going to practice all night and just do meditation," and doing it by themselves. And thinking, this is great, this is wonderful, because they see that this is the way. They don't have desire. There's not something that they're saying, "Oh, this is going to be nice." It is, and they also don't have this. Sorry, on your side you're talking about vibhava tanha. Vibhava tanha has an object that you get upset about. You want it not to exist. It can be associated with, or it can be followed by patiga, which is the anger minds. But even an anagami has vibhava tanha, which means they still have this desire for things not to be. When a person becomes an arahant, they become an arahant not because of the vibhava tanha, but in spite of it. The reason why they become the arahant is not because of their desire, "Oh, this suffering or these bad things, may they go away." It's the knowledge that this is useless, that this is meaningless, and that this is the correct way. The path out of suffering is the correct way. The vibhava tanha is just a coarse side effect that is, a desire-based mind, and it actually had the repercussions of it are to be reborn. This is why the anagami will still be reborn, because they have bhava tanha and vibhava tanha. They still have partiality. Anyway, I hope that helped. Anything else?
I had thoughts while you were speaking about it. I remembered the story of Ananda, who was, that I unfortunately can't remember any the sutta where it was, but he said, he explained very exactly that you need the wanting in order to overcome the wanting, the wanting to practice in order to become enlightened and lose the wanting. And the other thing was, I was thinking of that the Buddha catched his cousin Nanda with a trick.
We talked about this one before. No, we had this video before.
So in the beginning, when the person is new to meditation, doesn't know anything about it, the desire can come from everywhere. It can even be caught by a trick and lead you into this direction, as the Buddha did it with his cousin Nanda. And the Buddha told him, "Oh, you can have a celestial, beautiful being, even more beautiful than your bride that is crying for you there now. I'm cutting this story very short now. And Nanda trusted kind of the Buddha and practiced meditation because of bhava tanha, because of wanting and tanha and desire, and he became enlightened. And so
but okay, but let's look first at Ananda. Ananda's story, he's talking about a specific type of desire. And this is why it's not that he says you have desire for getting rid of desire. He says this is a kind of desire that leads to that desire ceasing. It doesn't mean that you can have tanha lead you to be free from tanha. It means there is something that we call desire. Because Ananda, he even uses the simile. He said he inserts it in there. I don't know the Pali words, but he said, didn't you have the desire, the intention? Because he's explaining it's not desire. It's just an intention to come here. You didn't think, oh, that sexy Ananda, I'm going to go to see him. You thought, it would be good for me to go to see Ananda today. That's not tanha. There's not necessarily the craving for it to arise or the attachment to it. There can arise the thought, this is appropriate to do now. And then there's the walking, and then there's the going. Once you get there, then the intention has been fulfilled. I still think, I'm obviously not the authority on this, but that what is being talked about here is the intellectual, this would be good, or this would be appropriate, which doesn't necessarily have to have tanha. Now, with Nanda, he didn't become enlightened thinking that he was going to become a god with celestial nymphs surrounding him. What the Buddha did was more devious than that. Nanda had tanha in him, kama tanha. His wife was Janna Pada Kalyani, the beauty of the land. That's what her name meant. It probably wasn't even her name. It was just the beauty of the most beautiful woman in the country. Miss India, you could say. And so who wouldn't? He was always thinking about her, and he was always unhappy as a monk. And so what did the Buddha have to do? What the Buddha did is showed him his lust. Okay, took him to heaven, gave him all this lust in these angels. Ooh, these angels, they're wonderful. These nymphs, these dove-footed nymphs. Well, they will be yours. And so you think, well, somehow that was helpful. But no, what was helpful was what he did next. He went around to all the monks and said, hey, guess what? Guess what I did? Nanda is... or it doesn't say that the Buddha did that, but the monks found out about it. And because the monks found out about it, well, what do you think that did to him? How do you think that made him feel? When all of the monks were saying, oh, so here's this hireling, this person who practices meditation for a bribe. And that was what made him change his mind. That's what made him feel ashamed and decide to realize how disgusting this was. The other part of how disgusting, and how you can see how disgusting is, one of the reasons why I ended up running away to Thailand to become a monk is because it was exactly that. I thought I was in love with someone, in love with this person, and then someone else comes along, boop, oh yes, this person. And someone else comes along, this person. I found myself, the mind was just going crazy with this desire for one thing and then another, and you realize that truly what the Buddha said was right. The mind, desire is like a fire. You can't save a fire, let it stay in this tree and not go to that tree. I'm going to light a fire and it's only going to stay in this wood, and this wood, even if this wood touches the fire, this wood isn't going to burn. Or you can light a fire and say, let it stay in the logs and not go to the grass, or let it not go to the leaves on the ground, or let it not spread to other things. You can't say this of desire, you can't say this of a fire. And so for sure he must have seen this, because this is the intellectual side of it, right? So he had the lust for her, but he also had the intellect, thinking, she's my wife, and she's my soulmate, right? People always talk about their soulmates, and it's kind of funny, because the mind is so fickle, right? You can You can mourn about someone for years, and you can forget about someone in a moment. And so when the Buddha showed him the dove-footed nymphs, he must have felt kind of silly, right? About all of this. Oh, maybe she wasn't my soulmate after all. Well, then who's my soulmate? And you give up the view about this desire has some meaning, that a husband and wife has some meaning, that the life of a householder has some meaning, the life of human beings and procreation and so on has some meaning, because suddenly it's totally taken out of context, and all that's left is his desire for dove-footed nymphs, which is ridiculous, really. And I would be willing to bet that had much more of a part to play in his enlightenment. But I just don't want to say that defilement can lead to enlightenment.
I mentioned that story because this is one thing. It is one thing that when you don't know anything about meditation, there can be a kind of incentive that makes you want to practice. And then the other thing is, once a person becomes a stream enterer, Nibbana becomes the object. So things change. Once you get on a path,
right.
You won't do that for nymphs anymore. But you know what you're going for because you have a glimpse of it.
But it's an interesting idea, and it's one that I'm sure is endorsed. I could probably even. It seems to me that there are many examples of how this sort of thing works, but you have to be careful in practice, because you see in Buddhist countries, for example, where they do this kind of thing, and then you get very, very corrupt monks that come. The reason a person is able to become a Sotapanna or not become a Sotapanna, not every meditator or monk or so on will ever even come close, has to be because of the good things that they've done in the past. It has to have the supportive conditions. Yes, the person who is practicing doesn't know what they're going towards, but they have the they're able to figure it out as they go along, and when they're given the advice and the instruction in meditation, they're able to follow the advice and to follow after it. Now, craving, considering that it's a habit forming mind state, it wouldn't lead one to understand reality